Well, it's a pleasure to be here in Galway City Museum. I'm John Waddell, formerly a Professor of Archaeology in NUI Galway. I first went to the Aran Islands as quite a small child, but when I was working in archaeology, I became fascinated by the archaeology of those islands, and in particular, of course, by the great forts like Dunangasa. Anybody who's stood on the present cliff face at Dunangasa and has seen, a glorious sunset will be completely struck by this very dramatic image of the sun sinking on the edge of the Atlantic, far away. It's more than a fort. It was a place for making magical metalwork that had, all sorts of contacts, I think, with the outside world in its day. A lot of people in the past have thought that the Aran Islands were isolated places, but frankly, I was never happy with that particular interpretation, because anybody who stood there, on Inishmore in particular, realizes very quickly it was an island that was occupied in the Bronze Age, around 1500 BC. Early Christian saints came there, early medieval pilgrims, Cromwellian soldiers. So it has a long and obvious history of contact with the outside world. The excavations in Dunangasa produced very interesting finds, not least the fact that metalworking took place before 1000 BC or thereabouts in Dunangasa. There was evidence that these clay molds were used to make swords and spears, pins and bracelets. Now, the making of metal on the edge of the world must have been quite an extraordinary feat. I think most of the material, if not all of the material for these objects, had to be imported. So why bring it all to the edge of the world to make? I think this was, to some degree, magical metalworking. I'm sure this magic metal, or at least some of it, was transported, perhaps over wide distances. So we have to imagine that our Aran folk in the Bronze Age were by no means isolated, and they were sharing in a pattern of reciprocal contacts on the Atlantic coasts of Europe.